So welcome everybody to our 5K Your Way live question and answer session this evening. I am really honoured and excited to welcome Jacquie and Amelia Beltrao, got that right, for our interview this evening. I don't need to give too much of introduction because I think we're going to have an amazing talk with two wonderful ladies. But I just want to give you a slight introduction around their background. So Jacquie is a Sky Sports News former Olympian, which is absolutely incredible, and is going through a journey with stage 4 breast cancer. So we're going to hear more about that in the interview this evening. And Amelia is Jacquie's daughter, so we're very honoured to have both of you on this evening, also working for Sky Sports. And Amelia's you've both been quite public around your journey in terms of being affected by cancer, but also supporting your mum in that journey, but also how exercise plays and movement and physical activity plays a huge role in your lives, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all about that. I'm sure everybody listening to the live question and answer tonight will do as well. So I wanted to really start with describe kind of where you guys have come from in terms of where your world is or where it was before you were diagnosed with cancer, Jacquie. So kind of tell us a little bit about Sky Sports, tell us about being an Olympian and what that journey has been like for you, because I know that people will be really interested in that.
My goodness, that's a lifetime ago being an Olympian. Blimey. I mean, I don't know if you can see my certificates on the wall, and it's a bit of a non-thing in our house because it was in the downstairs loo for years when I got it off my dad. And when Amelia saw it when she was a little girl, she was about 8. She was really into Hannah Montana, and when I hung it in the loo, she ran in one day and she went, Mum, I can't believe it. I can't believe that you've been to California. So the fact that it said, I've been to the Olympics, had completely passed her by, because as far as she was concerned, I mean, like a sports reporter, everybody I know goes to the Olympics, which is sort of true. I mean, I do know a lot of people who go to the Olympics. So that was a bit of a non-event, but, being in actual California, well, that was... Yeah.
That's amazing. That brings you back down to earth after an Olympics, doesn't it?
Nobody cares about Olympians in our house. It was such a long time ago. It's like ancient history. So, I mean, I did used to work for Sky Sports, you're right. And I made a switch about 20 years ago. Yeah, you were already born. And I went to work for Sky News to be their sports presenter. There's a lot of crossover. So I do a lot of sports interviews, which end up on Sky Sports News. All my Andy Murray interviews, all my Anthony Joshua interviews, all end up on Sky Sports News anyway. But I'm an actual presenter on Sky News. And I had breast cancer 6.5 years ago, nearly 7 years ago now. And it was a grade 2 breast cancer. And I decided to have chemo as a kind of backup. And as far as I was concerned, that was as far as it was ever going to go with me. And it would never darken my door again. It was small. It was caught really early. It hadn't spread anywhere. It was a grade 2. I had a mastectomy. I'd had all the chemo. I'd done everything that was kind of over and above that had been asked of me. And, and I'm a little bit of a fitness freak as well. Yeah. So I hadn't really let anything slide, I didn't think. So to get re-diagnosed in lockdown, I mean, it was just such a kick in the teeth. I would have taken coronavirus over cancer any day of the week, because it had come back, it's much more aggressive. It spread to other lymph nodes behind my breast. So it was, on the move. And, it's pretty much got my personality, this cancer. It's just really determined, which is very annoying, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you say, the emotions, it's hard for a lot of people to understand, being diagnosed with cancer just normally turns your life upside down, let alone being diagnosed during this year, which is COVID, where everything's up in the air, as well as being diagnosed with cancer. So can you describe that journey, as I guess Amelia as well, like how you both felt? Like Jacquie, you've said, you were diagnosed 6 years ago, and that was probably at that time cancer done for you. And I think a lot of people feel like that until they get, they may get a second diagnosis again, like you have. So what were those emotions for both of you, and how do you think how did you deal with that? Or if you didn't deal with it, what was going through your mind then?
Well, Amelia, you answer first, because it was so different for the children this time, because they were much younger 6 years ago, and they didn't know so much about cancer. But when your mum's had cancer, you end up learning quite a lot yourself. So this time they were much more knowledgeable, and in a way that was worse.
Yeah, I do just remember though, I think everyone had the same thinking throughout the first half of 2020, was with each month that went on, everyone's like, it can't get more worse than this. So January, February, March, and then it gets to June, and I was like, surely it can't get much worse than what we've already had. And it did. I remember the day very clearly when we first found out about mum. I had been out for a walk with some friends, and I knew that mum was getting a phone call from the doctor, and I came in and there was just very much an ominous atmosphere. I could see mum was on the phone to the doctor at the time. She wasn't sat up. She was quite hunched into her phone, just feebly nodding. And then she ran upstairs to my dad and in his office, and we just suddenly, us kids were downstairs, we just hear him go, no, no, no. And it was in that moment I was suddenly brought back to when I was 15, 16, when mum first was diagnosed. And it obviously I kind of had an idea what it was going to be before they told us. And I was then reminded of all the times of how I dealt with it then. And I don't think I dealt with it very well first time. And I was only 16, I was doing GCSEs, and I just kind of thought the way to do it was to bottle up, not really ask questions, let that get on with it. But I was like, no, I'm 22 years old now. It's got to be so much more different now. I'm more informed about it. I know how to handle it better. And that was just my thinking from the get-go, was that I now need to just make sure I support this woman. It wasn't really about me.
This woman.
Huh?
I love it. That determination.
And it was my thinking at the time. This woman now became the most important thing in my life. I had to make sure she was my sole focus, and everything that I did was to make sure that she dealt with it okay. And then anything that I was dealing with, I then would then turn to my friends, or I'd then go into my fitness. So funnily enough, the day after mum got diagnosed, I ran the furthest I'd ever run in my life. I just like, I need to leave the house, just get out. And you just kind of just feel the adrenaline running, coming through you as you're running. And I just remember it was built up with frustration and just upset. And I think I just needed to run out of the house. That was it. My first option. That was the first thing I could do. And then obviously come home, feel a bit more calm, and then tackle what was in front of me.
I mean, what was in front of us was really, really daunting, actually, because my surgeon, Mr. Sharma, is a fantastic man. He's a really good surgeon, but he's just a really nice man as well. He's very caring about his patients. He'll ring me often, you know, for no apparent reason, just to check up on me and see how I am. And he sounded really concerned on the phone, and normally he would put a positive spin on something, and he didn't at all. He just said, with this lump is a grade 3 breast cancer, and we need to get you into some tests as quickly as possible. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I've dealt with it once, I can deal with it again. You know, why is he sounding so, you know, weird? And you know, subsequently I realized it's because, you know, he had seen how maybe aggressive it was under a microscope, and he already kind of in his head, he thought, this is probably already moved. It's probably already spread. It's that, you know, aggressive and nasty. And he probably already knew that, but he wasn't really saying it. And but I remember the moment he said, you know, before I even knew how bad it was, you know, before it even was as bad as it was, I just felt like something had fallen through my stomach and has sort of like gone down to the bottom of my body like a brick. And then this sort of horrible feeling of panic, and just saying to Eduardo, get off the phone, get off the phone, get off the phone, cut your phone call short, get off the phone. And just disbelief, really. I couldn't believe that it happened again. I just couldn't believe that it happened to me again. And it's just so, it just seems so unfair. I mean, when I think of it now, I just think, you know, well, why not me? But at the time it felt so unfair. You know, of my friends, I'm probably the fittest. I do the most exercise. I've always been a really regular weight. I'm just, you know, my regular weight is just under 9 stone. I've been that for years and years and years. I'm now about 8 stone 2. I've lost so much weight during treatment. I've always done exercise pretty much every day. I'm very meticulous about what I eat. I'm quite fussy, and I'm quite, I'm not having that. That's pretty bad for you. I'm not having this. I'm not having the other. And my only kind of, and I've never smoked, and the only kind of thing I could think of was, you know, at weekends I meet up with my girlfriends, and we might have like a bit too much to drink, you know, 4 cosmopolitans, 5 cosmopolitans, or, you know, big fat glass of wine, or 2 or 3, you know, occasionally. And that's the only thing I can think of where I'd put a foot wrong. But at the end of the day, it's not any of that. I don't think it's bad luck.
Yeah, and I think, Jackie, I think a lot of people who are listening to this will have experienced similar emotions on being diagnosed with cancer. And, I was exactly the same when I was diagnosed at 24. I was fit, healthy, I ran every day. There was nothing that could have directed towards me. I didn't even know anything about cancer. But I think sometimes one of the hardest things is you never get told why you have it or what it came from, and obviously, like you say, often it's just bad luck, and that's really hard, I think, to cope with. So what I wanted to ask you was, how do you cope with the situation you're in now? And like, you live you're publicly you're in the public, and you're sharing your journey with everybody through your social media channels. So is that a coping mechanism? How do you try and cope with it? And some of us also know that you feel like people will see you coping, but elsewhere you might be falling apart. It would be really interesting to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I've always sort of shared the cancer journey. Even 6 years ago, I was very open about it. And my thought process then was, well, if I can, because what I did was the first thing I did was Googled who famous has got breast cancer and are they fine now? So that was the first thing I did 6-7 years ago. And I was really interested to see, the famous people like Kylie, and there's also one of the women off Sex and the City, and obviously Olivia Newton-John, she's my absolute hero, guru woman. And there are a few, but there's not that many people who are really, a lot of people have had it and you've never have known. And I just thought, well, what about if I'm open and can, just talk about the journey and explain it as I'm going through it? Maybe that will help some other women who are, getting diagnosed next week or the week after, or, in a year's time. Maybe I will be the person that they end up Googling and thinking, oh, well, she's all right, so I'll be all right. And that will give them that little bit of confidence to be okay. And this time it was a bit of self-protection and selfishness as well, in a way, because, if you're going through something, you're perhaps not on your game at work, and you might not be, totally in the moment of what you should be doing, because your mind is completely dominated by this, this huge news, which is like threatening your mortality. And I think it was more, well, if I'm not, great at my job this weekend, or I'm, I ask a daft question in an interview, or I seem a bit distracted, well, you know why, because this is why. And also, I suppose, just to put it out there, that this is a disease that can get anyone at any time, and it doesn't really matter what you do or how you live your life, or it's just very difficult to put a finger on how you could avoid getting cancer if you were already predetermined to get it. And I'm convinced that there is something in my genetic makeup that means that I was probably always likely to get cancer. I've been BRCA tested and I'm not, but there are other genetic things that they don't know about yet, which probably are at play here, because even my oncologist is really stumped. You shouldn't be in this position, and yet here we are.
Yeah, and I guess, Amelia, how does that translate to you in terms of seeing your mum go through the treatment and the journey that she's on, but also having to look after yourself and look after your mum? Like, I know from having cancer myself, but then watching my mum, my dad and my sister and my partner have to support me, when I thought about it, I think I'd have struggled to be in their situation of being the person who's supporting somebody with cancer. How do you take you through, like, your coping strategies through that?
I think it went back down to that moment when I came to the house, and it was, again, once switched back to when I was 16, because throughout the first time my mum had it, I look back and I think I didn't deal with it that well. It was not necessarily a stigma around it, but no one really knew much about cancer. It was a big, scary word. And for me in secondary school, no one talked about it. It wasn't something like teenage girls would really talk about or be open to talking about. So I didn't really I told maybe one or two of my school friends, didn't tell my teachers, and I didn't let the school know. So when I was preparing for my GCSEs, I had this ongoing battle as well. And I remember I was in our RE class once, and for some reason, this one teacher just didn't like me. She kept giving me bad grades no matter how hard I worked. And she gave me one bad grade. and she tried to sort of humiliate me in front of the class about my bad grade, and I burst into tears and I just screamed at her, my mum has cancer, in the classroom.
So it kind of all came out.
It all came out, and that's how my school found out about it. And my best friend then had to just take me out of the classroom and comfort me for a bit. And I then said to myself, this time round, I didn't want to do that to myself, because it wasn't healthy, me just not talking about it. The only people I had to speak about it with were my brothers. And again, they were young at the time. So they were 13 and 12 at the time, and they didn't really understand what was going on. And we were at quite an immature age where we didn't really ask questions. So we just kind of let mum and dad get on with it. So we actually found out on New Year's Eve when I was 16, but mum and dad had actually found out on Christmas Eve. So they had actually kept it from us not to ruin Christmas for us. So already from the start with that time round, we weren't really as involved in the process. This time round, I was like, no, I need to be involved. But then for me, in terms of how I was dealing with it, that was when I thought I might do the Instagram post, because I thought probably mum felt the same way, is that I shouldn't have to be dealing with this on my own. I know it's my problem, but to hell with everything else. Like, I need to deal with this. And if you're friends with me, I'm going to tell you about it, because this is how I'm going to deal with it. So I remember I'd be with mum in the week looking after her. And then on one Saturday, I'm like, I'm going to go see my friends. And I just pick out one friend, whoever it was, cry to them about it. And with the Instagram, we've
got an audience, they want to join.
My youngest son's just come in the door. I don't know why they're even barking, they know he lives here.
And with the Instagram post, when I just basically wanted to outline what mum's chemo was like, it was mainly for me, just to sort of like get out, like, what this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm dealing with. But then it was also meant to sort of benefit some of my friends, like, right, so, because I know that some people, they get a bit awkward, like, how do I talk about it with you? Like, oh, I heard about it, but I don't know how to approach it. I'm like, well, this is it. It's not scary. This is exactly what I'm dealing with. So if you know anyone else who's going through cancer or they're starting chemo, this, just refer to this, so then you can then apply it to your own situation. And the response, even from people my age, was overwhelming. I obviously mum had retweeted it, so I got a lot of response from people older than me, but a lot of people who are my age who had parents who had cancer or had even passed away from cancer, and they'd reached out to me and said, it's so nice to actually see you post this, because I've had to deal with it with my mum, or my dad had cancer. So it's really nice to actually see someone talk about it who's our age, because it seems like it's just such a taboo topic amongst people my age that no one really deals with it properly. They kind of just think, crack on and keep your head down.
Yeah, the social media part of it is really interesting, because you know, Twitter can be, you know, a horror cesspit of, you know, abuse, especially if you have a job on television. But since I kind of shared all my little videos and, you know, my little diaries of this is happening today, I'm doing chemo or whatever, you know, the support is overwhelming. And even when I don't even post anything, I get loads of support. And actually, you know, from people who are in the same situation as me, who've got, you know, cancer, which is technically incurable, getting in touch and just providing that kind of like comfort blanket of, oh yeah, she's going through the same things as me. And actually, one lady got in touch, and she was so lovely, and we speak all the time, we DM each other all the time, and she's called Ellen, she's in Wales, and she's in the same boat, and she's, you know, she's ahead of me, she's a few years ahead of me, and how she's coping and how she's sort of living year to year, and, you know, bad scan, good scan, still good scan, you know, and she's just been a real kind of, you know, crutch for me, as has a lady in Ireland who reached out on Facebook, which I never use ever, but I saw that my husband saw these messages on Facebook, and I don't know why I opened hers in particular, but I did. And she said, look, I was diagnosed with incurable cancer. I was given 3 months to live, and that was 25 years ago.
Wow.
And she just gave me it was a very long text. She goes, I was fine and you'll be fine. And we just started speaking, and she told me, you know, all her coping strategies, which I use a lot. And that's been really helpful. And I cling on to that. The fact that this woman who was told that she wouldn't live beyond 3 months because the cancer had gone to her lungs and she'd be dead, is still, you know, thriving. She doesn't have any cancer in her body, and she's now 75.
Wow.
And there was quite a few stories like that, actually.
And I think, like you've highlighted, it goes both ways, doesn't it? So you guys sharing your stories and being open and really honest about it really helps other people and empowers other people to start a conversation, maybe within their families or even on social media. But then, like you were saying there, Jackie, it's actually really helped you with your own personal journey. And I think some people forget about that. Like, they look at social media in such a negative way, but we've seen from our community, you know, a lot of people going through similar situation to you guys, and are actually seeing stories of hope and positivity and living in the moment. And sometimes you just a lot of the time you really need to read those so that you take inspiration from that and know, you know, there is a positive step forward, or how do I cope with this certain thing that somebody else has done. And actually, it'd be interesting to hear, you said the lady that reached out to you helped you with some coping strategies. Do you mind sharing like how they've helped you from, you know, one person to another?
Yeah, well, she's obviously quite a yogic person as well, and I think she lived in London with her husband, and then she's Irish, and they relocated to the countryside in Ireland, so she sort of changed her life in a way, made it maybe more simple. She said that she visualized the cancer as something quite funny, so she imagined all the tumors to be like 7 dwarfs, but they were, you know, like Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, and they all had like a name, and she made up a little song, hi ho, it's away from Annette we go. Her name was Annette, and she made up a little song, and she could visualize the cancer, either cells or the tumors, and she could visualize them leaving her body using little rope ladders to get down out of her body. And I just thought that was really great to sort of give them a face and kind of, you know, quite a cartoonish sort of face, personality.
Yeah.
But mine weren't that. Mine were gremlins from the movie Gremlins.
Brilliant.
Like Gizmo, but they were the naughty ones. But Gizmo was there as well, trying to get rid of the naughty ones and put them on a big yellow bus. So my song was Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. But it was a big yellow bus, because she said that her little dwarf figures, they ran off and they got on a bus and they left on a big yellow bus, like an American school bus. So I kept the bus, but the bus went down a yellow brick road really far away. So that was my little,
I love that.
That's brilliant.
I'm not singing to you. Road, the chorus. And then and she does a lot of meditation, which I've been trying to do more and more of, because my mind is very scattered and busy, and I'm always thinking of 10 million different things. But it's good to just think of nothing if you can, and it's very hard to do. So I've been doing that. What was the other thing she said? She just said, you know, she had a mantra, and she say every time that even she went to make a cup of tea was, thank you God for my perfect healing, thank you God for my perfect healing. So I sort of adopted that one as well. I can even do it in yoga, and I can actually do all the, if you count out the figures of the words, thank you God for my perfect healing, it's 7. And that is exactly the number of sort of lifts I do in the Tibetan 5 exercises. You do 21. So if you do, you know, 7, 7, 7, 7, that's 21, you know, stomach lifts or whatever. And I can just say it every single time. So yeah, so I did that, and I think, you know, she's still very spiritual now, and she's even got a meditation room in her house. So I did sort of go down that road of just trying to not think about the cancer as a cancer, but like little cartoon figures that would soon be leaving on a big yellow bus. And if I couldn't think about that, I'd just try and think about nothing. But it's a real mental adjustment, that's for sure. You can't do that straight away, and you can't really believe in it straight away. But you have to try and live your life with some joy. So you do have to try and get your head around it and get your anxiety levels down, which is not easy, I have to say.
No, but I do, from what you were saying there, so people have different ways, and we're going to go on to how yoga's played a huge part in your life. And I think, you know, what people often say is that positivity, which it's not just about waking up in the morning and go, yeah, I'm ready for life, even when I've got cancer, because it's hard, like it's hard to be positive all the time. But there is that connection between the mind and the body, which is so fascinating. And actually, if we can retrain our brain and our ways of thinking, like you're saying, living more in the moment, to really help with anxiety and other traumatic, you know, post-traumatic stress of treatment, surgeries, depression, all of that sort of stuff. It's about bringing in exercise as well as mindfulness, whatever works for you, to try and help you to cope with that. And I think, you know, a lot of people listening will have their own techniques and strategies to be able to cope with that. But like we all say, it's not just a turn it on, turn it off kind of thing. It's a up and down journey that you'll go through. So tell us about yoga. So was yoga part of your life before you were diagnosed with cancer, or has it been since you were diagnosed with cancer? Where does it sit?
No. It's been a part of my life for ages, actually. My yoga teacher was one of the mums from school when Amelia was younger, at junior school, and she was trying to. I think she'd been a housewife for a long time, and she wanted to become a yoga teacher. It was her dream. So she started training as a yoga teacher, and she said, I need someone to practice on. So would you practice with me? So every Friday we'd go into the church hall, and she would do her lesson plan, and we'd do the yoga together. And that went on for years. And then she started a class in her house, and maybe 2 or 3 people would come, and I would go. And then we started going on once a year to India on a yoga retreat with this lady. So
you're a proper yogi then.
Yeah, proper yogi in India and all that.
Amazing.
And I just kind of, you know, I 6 years ago, once I'd recovered from my mastectomy operation, I went back to yoga and, you know, tried to sort of make sure I did it more often than once a week. I was actually properly practicing yoga, and now it's, yeah, I probably do yoga maybe 4 or 5 times a week. And I've sort of amalgamated my little routine. Is it's not just yoga, it's a bit of yoga shred, which is, you know, if I gave it to Amelia to do, she'd think it was okay. It's not just, you know, lame poses. Well, I don't find them lame, but my children find yoga.
I just get a bit bored.
Yeah,
I'm actually the same, Amelia. I'm the same.
My routine's really hard. You wouldn't be able to do it. I'm sorry.
It is. Yoga's hard. I am with you on that.
It takes about 20 minutes. So I've got this routine, and it's quite fast paced. Lots of lunges, lots of, like, you know, leg raises. So, you know, your core's properly being worked, lots of very long held planks. So I've got this little routine. So I kind of do that on my own. And then I'll tap into Trish, my yoga teacher, maybe once a week for a joint lesson on Zoom. Obviously, we can no longer go to the studio, which is very annoying. And do that. But she's actually been a real key part as well in my getting my head around the situation. I mean, because to be told that you've got a cancer that's not curable, I don't think, is really, really difficult. I mean, it's the most horrible thing you can ever be told, I think. And and she didn't believe it. She just said, no. Here's my singing bowl. Use it every night. So I do.
What's the singing bowl? You have to elaborate on that one.
It's a Tibetan bowl, which is made of, I want to say copper, but it's probably brass. And it has like a stick. And when it's like a gong when you bang it. And if you go round and round, it makes this real vibrating humming noise. It's quite
it's almost like a steel drum.
You have to.
It's quite. But it's more circular and tiny. It's about this big.
So I put that on my chest, and I imagine the gremlins going, please turn off that horrible noise, and then they run for the hills, in my mind. But we used to go on dog walks, and she said, no, this is just going to be a different part of your journey, and I can see you, you know, talking to people about cancer and being a real, you know, trailblazer, and, you know, like a poster girl, and, you know, helping other people. This is going to be a new part of your life. This is not the end of your life. This is going to be a new part of your life. And she just sort of kept drilling that into me every time we went for a dog walk. She was completely convinced that I'd be fine. It was just good to walk with her and have her talk about, you know, almost mind over hard, horrible, cold facts, which I had written down on a piece of paper.
And I think often, sorry, Georgie.
No, I was just going to say, she's definitely just turning a challenge into an opportunity there for you. You know, in saying that you're not gonna let it take over, and that you're gonna use it to for stuff like this, you know, for helping others, not for a negative. That's all I was just thinking. It's a great mindset she obviously had, and, you know, was able to pass on to you.
I think one of the difficult things as well with people dealing with cancer is that what you find is those intense feelings of fear, anger, frustration end up fueling the cancer, and can actually make the whole situation worse. So you've got to
the stress
of that so you've then got to try and find a balance of, right, I've got to learn to accept it, not be scared of it, not be angry at it. I've got to just learn to live with it. I think that's one of the biggest mental challenges when it comes to cancer. Not that I speak from experience, but as I've seen with my mum.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the hardest battles to go through, because then
I
if
was-
you learn to live with it and you kind of accept it as just part of who you are, it's a lot easier to go through your day-to-day life rather than waking up fearing what's going to happen today, what's it going to bring for me today. So I think the yoga definitely helped with that.
And I think, like, when you were talking there, I really believe this, and I've believed this for years since after I was diagnosed. It's who you surround yourself with is so important. So the people that you have in your everyday life, the people who are talking to you, it's like everything they say is an affirmation. And the more you say negative stuff, the more that gets ingrained in the brain. The more you surround yourself with positive, uplifting people, but real people who will also be honest and open with you. I think that is so important when you're going through something like cancer and you are in the situation you're in, because like you say, negativity can send you in a totally different direction, and it can just fuel that anxiety and that fear and anger. And in reality, what happened yesterday, or the fact that you're diagnosed with cancer, I always say you literally can't do anything about it right now. You can't change what's happened in the past, so you can only look at the present and where you want to go, and you have control, not necessarily, you can take control of that in some way, and that, I feel a lot of people feel empowered when they realize that. I think
my oncologist has got a lady that she treats, and she's treated her for about 10 years, and she's called Eryl, and she lives in Wimbledon Village, which is actually very near us up the road, and she is 90. And she has been handling her breast cancer since 1976.
Wow.
So, I know. And she's had it everywhere. It's been in her spine, it's been in her lungs. I mean, you name it, it's been there, I think. But they've always managed to kind of grab it back. And I asked my oncologist if I could talk to her. So, she'd arranged for us to talk. So we had this great chat, and she's the funniest lady. She's now at sort of in end of life care, because she's 90 and they can't really give her any more treatment. It would be just too much. She's too frail. But she's blooming 90.
Yeah.
And Eryl, we had this chat, and she was really posh, Eryl. Oh, the dog's going again.
They just want to come in the interview, that's why.
It's like bark at this time of night. And Eryl just said, well, I said, how did you get through it? This stage 4 thing that's always going to be hanging over your head, like an axe, literally like an axe hanging over your head. How did you deal with that? And she said, well, Jacquie, you just always go forward, never go back. There's no point in going back. Just go forward. Just keep going forward and you'll be fine. And
that's amazing. Yeah.
She said, I said, did you give up drinking? And she went, oh, no, I do like a brandy. I haven't drunk about it because, it doesn't agree with me anymore. But, I do like a brandy. I like red wine. Oh, I've partied. And I have 5 Maltesers after my dinner because I do like a Malteser. I thought she had a really good way of dealing with it. And she must have done, because she's 90.
Bless her.
That's amazing. Always go forward, and 5 Maltesers. I definitely think I'd eat more than 5.
And brandy.
Yeah, and the brandy, yeah. And I think, do you know what's highlighted there, Jacquie? I think sometimes you hear people go through life and don't build relationships with people, and you're building relationships by the sounds of when you're describing people who you've connected with through one of the hardest times in your life. And I think that's amazing, because sometimes I think if you weren't, none of us wanted to be diagnosed with cancer, but if you didn't, you wouldn't have had these experiences or met the type of people that now you've probably got that connection with that you wouldn't have had before. And it just, I kind of felt that emotional feeling then when you were talking about Eryl there.
I know,
so lovely.
She's great. But what I would say as well, though, if anyone else is going through it, is be selective about what you want to say, how much you want to say, when you want to say it, because it can get quite draining. I mean, I have got, very well-meaning friends, lovely as they are, sending me text messages going, how are you? Or ringing me, or an aunt who rings me all the time for wanting an update. Well, I don't have anything to tell you apart from the fact I feel fine, and same as I did last week. And, they just want to go over and over and over the situation. And I don't want to go over it. I've gone over it in my head a gazillion times and cried like a million tears. I just don't want to do that every week just because you want to hear the latest episode. If there's something to tell, I'll tell you, but please don't keep asking me on a text message. I mean, if you really want to know, give me a phone call, but blimmin' don't expect me to sit there and waste my precious life typing out a big long message just so that you know the latest. It sounds a bit rude and harsh, but it's just how I feel about it. I just, you know, I see a message and go, oh, I'm not replying to that.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think when I was going to say this actually, when Amelia, when we spoke about your blog, which on Instagram, or what you wrote on Instagram, which was really powerful. And do you think that's a way of communicating your feelings, so to help you, you know, cope and express what you're going through, to help yourself and others, but also to kind of stop, so people kind of know what's going on, but then when you see people, you can have normal day-to-day conversations about life as well, because I think, like you say, that's really important.
So you're not repeating yourself over and over again.
Like, I'm fortunate enough in which I have quite a big friendship group, so it was a lot easier for me if I just put it down on paper, say, look, this is what's happening in my life, this is what I'm dealing with, do with it what you will, text me, call me, whatever, but please don't go hassling me and like what's happening now, like Mum said. And I think as sad as it is to say, but these sorts of moments in your life, that's when you really start to realize who your real friends are and how they deal with it becomes really important, because then you start to think, you may see one friend who you thought was a really good friend of yours, but actually deals with it in a way that wasn't appropriate. They don't really step up to the plate, or they just don't do enough. And I think that's when you actually start to really realize that, right, who really are my good friends here, who are going to ask the right questions or know how to sort of make me feel better, not just they want to show they support me in a way that's not necessarily going to bring me down, because I'm not going to be thinking about it, but also just makes me aware that they are there if I do need to talk to them.
Yeah. And I think it's always really difficult, isn't it? Because, you know, I've had cancer myself, but I've had family and friends, people really close to me, diagnosed with cancer, you know, in the last 6 months. And even the first conversation with them, I found really difficult, even though I've had cancer myself and been through treatment. And it's interesting, isn't it? Around, sometimes we don't need to offer any words or any advice. It's actually just listening, but listening when the person's ready to talk. I think that's, you know, coming from a person who's been through it, but still I wouldn't know exactly the right thing to say at the right time. I think, it's fascinating actually to see how people respond to different things.
It's funny when people, though, they're well-meaning, but they say things like, every time they see you,
you're so brave.
Yeah, you're so brave.
Yeah.
You're doing it so well. And are you better now? And you're like, oh, yes, I'm better. No, I'm not better. But
the other thing is
I don't understand, but it's like they think there's going to be an end to this, but there isn't. This is like my life now.
Yeah. And it's like, you look amazing. No, I feel like shit. Really. I'm allowed to say that on here.
I'm feeling sorry for myself. Yeah, you look great, though. Oh, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think, like you say, it's good to be. I remember when I was diagnosed and I walked up the stairs and I had no hair, completely bald, and there was a mirror at the top of the stairs, and I walked up and my husband, I obviously looked in the mirror, and my husband's like, what are you looking at? And he was like, you've got no hair anyway. And it was just a joke, and I was just like, okay, I get that. But you know, when it's like that humor as well, like it's just to the point bluntness, and sometimes we need that in our lives, instead of that smothering in cotton wool and you know always saying all those sort of things. So I was gonna,
what else are you gonna do apart from be brave? Well, you could like go to bed and cry for 2 years.
I remember if I was going to see my friends, I'd sometimes have to just put a warning out, like, I don't want anyone talking to me about it. I don't want anyone telling me that I'm brave or I'm coping with it really well. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to have fun. If I'm going to see you, we're going to have a good time. And if I want to talk to you, I will come and talk to you about it if I feel ready and I feel like I need to.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to say that beforehand, because then you've literally set it out. If I want to talk about it, I'll come to you. You know, I think we haven't actually talked to, I think you're the first. That's why Amelia reached out to you. We wanted to talk to someone that, was a family member, had a family member going through treatment. And it's interesting to hear, obviously, how you have dealt with it as well. And you're both slightly different, but kind of obviously similar. And so I think a lot of people like that come to our groups and that in our community can relate to that, because it's not just the people going through it, you're going through something as well, and it's important to recognize that.
I think as well with the pandemic as well, at the time it was a lot to take in. Like at the time when Mum first got diagnosed, this was only when I think Boris had just started saying you could see just a bit over 6 people, but we weren't still hugging. So my bestest friends who I've known since I was 3 years old, they'd find out and I'd see them and I couldn't hug them, and they'd just like, can I please hug you? I'm like, I really can't take the risk, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult. And then I remember the Black Lives Matter movement started taking over the news as well. It's like, my God, you just turn and nothing seems to be going right. Like the news is draining, like home is just not nice, and just it was all so much. And then it's when you then need those friends who are like, right, we're going to go do something fun, we're going to try and take your mind off it. That's the ones that you really need at that time.
Prosecco in the park.
Yes.
That sounds amazing. And I think and you've highlighted, you know, this year alone, without, you know, how Jackie having you diagnosed with cancer and going through that as well has been tough enough, and let alone everybody hitting a bit of a COVID fatigue in terms of like being at home all the time and change environment. And I know, you know, exercise, as you know, and we've spoke about the yoga, but what I wanted to ask both of you, Jackie with yoga and then Amelia, to talk about what exercise you find helps you, but how actually, I'm always really interested in when you're doing, Jackie, for example, yoga, what does it make you, like, how does it make you feel? And do you literally just focus on where you are at that point in time? Because could you kind of want to say, if you didn't have yoga in your life, do you think you'd be coping the way you are, or actually does it play a huge role in your life, exercise, and maybe your runs as well?
Yeah. Well, when I do yoga, and I did it all through my my chemo as well. What I feel when I'm doing it is I feel strong. So it makes me feel strong, and that's important to me because I don't want to feel weak. Yeah. And I know the drugs are making me weak, and I know that they're trying to, you know, knock back your white blood cells, your red blood cells, your hair, everything. It's trying to, you know, literally poison you without actually killing you. And when I'm doing yoga and I'm feeling quite strong in a, you know, a really good strong warrior pose or a plank or something, I'm telling myself that I'm still strong and I'm stronger than it. So I like the feeling of, you know, the strength that it gives me. And, you know, also I'm quite aware that, you know, I'm much more aware of the cancer this time, what it's using for food, and mine was estrogen and is estrogen. But also when you go for a PET scan, which I never had before, they give you a glucose solution to drink. It's radioactive, but it's essentially a sugar drink, and it's not to drink, but it's an injection. And what they measure the cancer by is, you know, can they see the active cells like munching through this glucose, because cancer loves sugar. So in my mind, it's like, well, cancer loves sugar. Okay, I'm going to stop eating sugar. I'm going to just eat enough for me, and there'll be nothing spare. So, you know, hence the keto diet, being very strict with my food. But then if you exercise, you know, after you've had some food, or even just exercise during the day, you're also using up, you know, excess glucose. You're cutting down on the spare that's going to be around for the cancer to use to replicate. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm starving it, which was also, you know, I'm doing yoga, I'm starving it. I'm running, I'm starving it. I'm running off the estrogen that's excess in my body. I'm running off the glucose that's excess in my body. I'm just running it off. And if I'm running it off, I feel really good that I've literally, you know, given it no tea. So that was an important psychological thing, the exercise and the glucose and the strength.
That's that's really interesting, because the evidence around, so obviously it's, I'm guessing are you getting advice on the ketone diet and in terms of working with your consultant on those sort of things? Because
no, it was just, I just read books, and everything seemed to point to that. I mean, probably too extreme. I'm not on the keto diet now so much. I am reducing, you know, I used to love biscuits. I mean, God, nothing was great without a rich tea. Everything had a rich tea biscuit with it. But that's gone now, and I just don't eat that sort of stuff, and I really limit, you know, my sugar intake. But I've added in some carbs because I just found life too sad without them, to be honest.
Everybody needs a carb, but
there's definitely a balance.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing as well is you're finding out what's right for you and how your body responds, and that's so important because everybody's body responds differently. But I think, you know, there is now, like we know, a lot of evidence around exercise and movement, and, you know, reducing all the long-term symptoms, reducing, you know, cancer sized tumours in some areas and reducing reoccurrence and fatigue and all of those areas. So it is so important in that sense. And I think for me, what's so important is you sharing that story around how you feel stronger and how physically and mentally it helps you and how you feel more present with it. And I think a lot of other people will be able to relate to that in terms of how they feel when they go out and exercise or do something that's right for them, really. And so, Amelia, I kind of want to touch on your, just before, I know we're kind of wrapping up. We won't go over an hour, I promise. I could talk to you both for hours though, because I feel like we should do a part 2 because I feel like there's so much to learn.
I've got the pack, so I can't do that.
No, you're off to Brazil. Yeah, we don't have anything exciting to do tomorrow. So, yeah, Amelia, I was going to ask, what exercise do you do?
So I have a very different approach to exercise. So Mum's very much into her yoga. I very much prefer my weights and doing the sort of circuits classes. Personally, again, it's the essence of being able to like build myself stronger. So if I'm trying to get to 10 reps of this certain weight, it's like, okay, well, if I've got to 10, I'm feeling a bit stronger, maybe I can push another 2 more. And I then push myself physically in that way. But then you feel the endorphins building up. And I know for me, I'm probably wound up my family over this lockdown, because if I put a good playlist on and it gets me in a good mood, I'm more likely to do a better workout, and I'll be there singing at the top of my lungs. So
is that Hannah Montana?
No, Hannah Montana, no.
I love Miley Cyrus now.
Oh my God,
I'm a Hannah fan.
I loved Hannah Montana, and I was a little bit older as well. So.
I still love Hannah Montana.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
It gave me a good distraction, because it gives me, if I have a set of exercise I want to do, it gives me a set of routine and say like 45 minutes to an hour. So right, I'm going to do all these exercises. That keeps my mind distracted and keeps it focused on something. But then obviously, as the more you get into it, the more you start to enjoy it. And then one key thing I think I found was actually just putting on a good song. Like, if you've got, my favorite song of all time is Somebody Else's Guy, Jocelyn Brown. And I'd also find if I played like some of my favorite songs at the beginning of the day, just singing at the top of my lungs, even if I've just woken up, it would really cheer me up. And I remember doing that. I was putting together lots of playlists around the time Mum first got diagnosed, just putting songs that just made me feel happy.
That's awesome. No one said that before, I don't think. I like that. Yeah, I really like that.
When someone asked me, I remember when I first put the Instagram post up and someone who reached out to me is like, help me, I'm starting chemo tomorrow, what are your tips? That was one of my tips. I said either reserve a little treat for yourself after your chemo treatment, or start off the day that you're going to do chemo by playing your favorite songs, like your top favorite 3 songs, sing that, like force yourself to sing the words along to it. And even if you find yourself in a miserable room, by the end of it, you'll definitely be a bit happier.
Oh, that's amazing. We'll have to put that out on our Instagram, actually. Yeah, like you say, there's nothing better than music and movement.
And singing and singing.
Just put a laptop to full volume and just blast it out.
And doing something like that, you couldn't help but smile, you know, and then you'll be happy.
I can see it in your face, actually, I can see you there singing. I
might have to put it on afterwards just to get it out, because I'm now itching to sing it.
Yeah, you have to,
So just before we tie this up, do you, I'm just intrigued, do you exercise together, both of you?
No.
I love that.
No, I'm not. You should see the weights that she lifts. They're like me. She lifts me. She lifts 50K.
Wow, that's incredible.
No. Mine's a much more gentle workout.
And then I get bored lying down.
At the end of it. But I can imagine as an ex-Olympic.
She finds it so relaxing, like, right now it's time to relax. I'm like, I'm bored now, I need to get up.
I can imagine there was an ex-Olympic gymnast doing yoga. I don't think I would want to go in the room with you either, Jackie.
Yes, I'm very good. No, I'm not. I'm not. There's actually loads of things that I'm very stiff at, and then it annoys me.
You're a perfectionist with it, so you'll be there filming your yoga pose for 20 minutes until you've got the right.
I've actually been practicing the scorpion. I think I've been trying to do it now so I can balance on my elbows without being up against a wall or anything. I think I've been practicing that pose, not really being able to completely do it on my own without the support of the wall. I think I've been practicing for 3 straight years.
Wow. That is persistence.
Definitely. Can you send us a picture? I'd love to see that.
I'm going to do yoga after this, and I'll put it on my Twitter, and you can see. But I mean, I still can't do it without the support of something behind my legs, which is a shame considering how long I practiced it. But
that actually, for me, that proves, Jackie, your determination.
Yeah.
Because if you can practice something for 3 years and still be practicing at it, I'd have been long gone after a week, I think.
Yeah.
You've got to have goals.
Yeah, exactly. What we'll have to do, actually, Jackie, we'll have to get you to give us a little yoga routine that we can put on our social media and get everybody to join in if they can hack it.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be quite cool. I've just put you on the spot there, though.
Well, the only issue with that is I have to find the ladder from outside so I can tape the iPad to it. Otherwise, you won't be able to see what I'm doing. And then you do it from a height.
Brilliant. Well, as you've got to go on holiday tomorrow, we will leave you to get packing. I just want to ask you both either your favourite quote or a bit of advice you would give to somebody listening who might be going through the same situation. I know, Amelia, you've already given that, but either your favourite quote or a bit of advice.
Do you want to go?
It sounds obvious, but talk to your friends. Don't feel like you're burdening them, because you will find that you won't be burdening them at all. They really do want to listen, and they want to help you in any way, shape or form. And even if that's just lending a pair of ears just so that you can vent to them, cry to them, they will be there, and a problem shared is a problem halved, and I promise that.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great.
My one was, it's a quote, but it's not a quote because I can't remember it exactly. There is no state of decline that the human body cannot recover from. Not any, not ever, not if you really want to.
Love that. That's really powerful. Yeah.
Wow. Where did you read that?
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
Sorry.
Georgie, stop.
If I'd known you were going to ask me that, I'd have got the whole quote because it's really good.
Sorry. Maybe tweet that with your yoga post.
Yeah, and it is about, it's about what you want. What do you want? What do you want to happen? And whatever you want, you can make it happen, because you're meant. The end part says, because you're meant to thrive. When you see these people who've got miracles, they're not miracles. It's what you're meant to do. You're meant to thrive.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's really powerful. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, guys. We've had an amazing chat, and I think I'm going to leave on finish on Eryl. I think it is Eryl, wasn't it? Her quote of "always go forward."
Yeah, always go forward, Jackie. Never look back.
In that accent.
Yeah, love that.
It's better in your accent.
Yeah, definitely. You said a lot better than doing it. So if people want to follow you guys in terms of your journey and what you post on social media, where should they follow you? I'm
on @SkyJackie with JACQUIE on Twitter and on Instagram. I don't know what I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
We'll find you.
I'm just Amelia with an extra A, so AMELIA Beltrao, and that's the same for Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. And so we're going to say goodbye to Facebook now. If you guys stay on, so we can say thank you again. But thank you so much for your time. We know how busy you guys are.
Thank you.
And we really, really appreciate. I could have chatted to you for hours because I love hearing about your story, your insights, your yoga, your exercise, and how you're coping with what you're going through right now. So thank you so much. It's been an honor to interview you guys. We will see our 5K Your Way community soon when we next do our question and answer. And have a great evening, everybody. See you guys later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.